Hello everyone, this is AndresRestart, and today we are talking about how it's looking like one, if not more Nintendo Direct games have been leaked, but not only that, it's looking like we have other potential leaks or rumors for games coming to Nintendo Switch 1 beyond the release of Nintendo Switch 2 early next year. And that's what I would like to talk more about today. But before going forward, let me ask that if you do enjoy my content, to please subscribe and hit the notification bell. So let's start off by talking about one of the biggest announcements from yesterday, and that's that the Legend of Zelda draws near according to the official Dragon Quest account. So it's looking like we're getting something relating to the classic Dragon Quest character Erdrick fairly soon. So, on Twitter, Midori said this in response to this announcement. More information on Dragon Quest III HD 2D will be revealed in a few weeks. And then she follows this up by saying, I am currently hearing that Dragon Quest III HD 2D will be at the next Nintendo Direct. So here we have probably one of the bigger announcements we're going to see during the Nintendo Direct. An HD 2D remake of Dragon Quest III. I'm kind of thinking this is a pretty big deal. I'm not the biggest Dragon Quest fan personally, but I've never had anything against the series, and I've always had an interest in the HD 2D games, so seeing a remake of this one, especially with Erdrick from Super Smash Bros., you know, one of the hero alts from Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, I'm thinking a lot of Nintendo fans are probably going to be fairly into this. And looking at the history of HD 2D games, most of them have been made by Team Asano, if I'm not mistaken. So if we're getting another HD 2D game, and this one's a remake of Dragon Quest III, this could be our Team Asano announcement that we're expecting to see this year, which I've been predicting we would see in the Nintendo Direct. So it's looking like things are lining up here, so I would say this is a fairly exciting leak. Now, you may be unfamiliar with Midori, but they're pretty much considered to be one of the more reliable leakers, and they have been speaking on a lot of things as of late, relating to Nintendo and other companies. Perhaps a lot of this has to do with us nearing that June period of time where we see a lot of announcements industry-wide, and so perhaps that's why they've been more vocal. We already discussed a few times how they've been bringing up different codenames for different Nintendo projects, and one that I think we're going to see in the next Nintendo Direct that Midori has referred to is this banquet game, which I think is the next Mario Party, because Super Mario Party was codenamed Buffet, and apparently this project is being made by Gamecube, the developer of the Mario Party games, and simply timing-wise, I think it makes sense for Mario Party to show up soon. So as time is progressing here, it seems like we are getting a better picture of what may show up in the Direct, this HD 2D remake of Dragon Quest III, potentially the Team Asano game, one of Nintendo's bigger published titles for the second half of the year, which I think is going to be Mario Party. But there's another game that people are thinking we're going to see in the second half of this year that could be a pretty big deal, and perhaps a bigger deal than the games we've already discussed. And this one might have to do with The Legend of Zelda. So there was actually a leak and a rumor a while back about a Zelda Lego set. We've covered this multiple times already, especially in the conversation relating to potential hints towards a remake of Ocarina of Time in the future. Well, it looks like, yeah, it's been confirmed, it's real, it's happening, it's coming out September 1st, the Lego set. And what's really interesting about this Lego set is that it's not just about Breath of the Wild's Deku Tree, but also the Hero of Time, the Ocarina of Time Deku Tree set as well. I mean, take a look at some of these amazing images of this set. This is young Link in his house from the beginning of the game in Ocarina of Time. This is not Breath of the Wild or Tears of the Kingdom stuff. This is hard Ocarina of Time love here with this Lego set. So it's not just like a subtle, oh yeah, they have another Deku Tree that's somewhat like from Ocarina of Time. No, they have some straight up Ocarina of Time Lego sets here, and that's pretty cool. We have Navi, but there's more. Like, check out this image here. This is for the Breath of the Wild version, but it still looks pretty cool. We have Princess Zelda, the Sheikah Slate, the Master Sword, Link. Like, I'm just loving this. It's $300 this set is, which seems like a lot, but also this is like the best thing ever. Look, we have even Koroks here. It looks so good. And here you can see the 4 different figurines for this Lego set, 2 of which are from Breath of the Wild, Zelda and Link. But then we have 2 other Links from Ocarina of Time, Young Link and Adult Link. So this is kind of huge, just in terms of like Zelda love that we're getting later this year. But how might this pertain to a potential game we could see this year or somewhat beyond? Well, as I mentioned earlier, I've talked about this Lego set, this whole Zelda memorabilia thing, some of it having to do with Ocarina of Time, because there has been a long-running theory that I've had, but even goes beyond before I was theorizing it, because there were even rumors a few years back, of a remake for The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time. If you account for all released versions, it's the most popular Zelda game outside of Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom. So it's a big deal Zelda game. And we've discussed in the past, there have been different interviews with Aonuma where it seems like he's hinting at fans not knowing too much about Rauru and how it's curious, but also how he was literally asked point blank in a Gamer Informer interview about this idea of remaking Ocarina of Time, and he didn't deny it. But then in a similar interview around the same time, he was asked about a Zelda Dungeon Maker, and he denied that. And then we also think about how Aonuma has teased Zelda projects in the past, like with Skyward Sword HD. There's a variety of different things, not everything I'm going to mention in this video, that seem to be hinting that Nintendo will at some point remake Ocarina of Time. And with this Zelda Lego set that has a huge emphasis on Ocarina of Time, it does seem like they want to keep this particular game, this very old game, so old that Aonuma would be surprised that most fans would even know who Rauru is from that game. It's interesting, to say the least. And it's leading many to speculate that perhaps Ocarina of Time, this theorized, rumored remake, could be this big Zelda game for this year. And I just want to say straight up, I do not think this is happening. But if it was happening, my goodness, it would be so exciting. But just let me explain why I don't think it's happening this year. I think the big idea with remaking an old Zelda game, and when I say remake, I mean like an ambitious remake, not just a remaster, would be to put together a Zelda project that would definitely be a lot easier to do than a brand new Zelda game that would have a shorter development cycle, something that can be done in the meanwhile while the main Zelda team works on the next big Zelda game that is still very likely to be many years from now, but also so they can entice the Zelda fan base early on for the next generation, showcase the ability to switch to with a visually impressive Zelda release, and bring in that core Zelda fan base while holding them over until they're ready for the next big 3D Zelda. I think a modern remake of Ocarina of Time would be the best fit for this, and I would say seeing this Lego set here and seeing how Nintendo definitely is still marketing Ocarina of Time even this many years after the fact does show at least some part of their marketing team seems to agree that if they're going to remake any Zelda game, this one might be the best fit. And so I think this would be a Switch 2 project coming out within the first couple years of the console. In other words, not this year, not this September, not as a final Switch 1 game. But I will say, if they did do it for Switch 1, I think this would easily be a 10+ million seller. And when you look at games like Metroid Prime Remastered and Paper Mario: The Thousand Year Door, they could definitely put together some sort of visual reworking of Ocarina of Time that would look extremely impressive. It could be very hyped. They could even release like a Zelda Ocarina of Time OLED. They could do some really special good Zelda stuff this year with something like that, and this would definitely help Nintendo software sales and hardware sales, especially when they account for that 13.5 million mark that they want to hit for Switch hardware sales this fiscal year. This would make it feasible. And I will also point out that there is this rumor coming from Papagenos that there is going to be some sort of Zelda release fairly soon that will have something to do with Princess Zelda having a starring role. Now, it's been suggested that Papagenos might even have this in his predictions, and this is not at all related to a Breath of the Wild remaster that was brought up by Midori not so long ago. So the implication seems to be that, yeah, it would be something that happens in the second half of the year for Switch 1. And hypothetically speaking, again, I don't think this is happening, but entertaining the thought that we could get the remake this soon on Switch 1, what if this Princess Zelda role that she could be starring in could be some extra new content added to an Ocarina of Time remake where we see more of what happened to Sheik? Like where Princess Zelda went during those 7 years between young Link and adult Link. What happened while he was in the Temple of Time? How did Princess Zelda train up? And just seeing what Sheik would be doing behind the scenes when Link wouldn't be around. An adventure about Sheik. That would be pretty exciting, and it does make some sense. But one, I think that's a lot to ask for a remake in Ocarina of Time. And two, again, I don't think we would see it for Switch 1. but I'm entertaining the possibility, and we do have this really cool Lego set, which is curious to say the least, and we do have this rumor from Papagenos, who does have some history of getting things right, and I still think that we are getting something Zelda for second half of the year. So it could be a Zelda spin-off, maybe it is some kind of remake with new content in there, or perhaps it's simply remasters of Wind Waker and Twilight Princess. There's a variety of possibilities here, so we'll see what happens with that. But there is even more that I would like to discuss here. So there is this rumor coming from Brazil that we mentioned somewhat yesterday regarding a GameCube remaster and a 3DS remaster coming in the next fiscal year. Not this current fiscal year, not going to be showing up in this Direct. Again, it's a rumor according to Brazil, take it with a grain of salt. But what could these remasters be, and could they have any relevance to the Direct? Well, one if not both of them I think might be somewhat relevant here, because both these remasters could be tied to different series that we might have another entry of in the Direct. So, for example, let's say we are getting some kind of Zelda spin-off or remasters of Wind Waker and Twilight Princess HD this year, and we see those during the Direct, then maybe this 3DS remaster we're going to see is a remaster of a Zelda game. So perhaps they could be remastering A Link Between Worlds, so we can see another 2D Zelda entry on Switch 1 after Switch 2 comes out. This actually does make some sense to me. It would be a good way to get a solid 2D Zelda title out there that fans would enjoy, but it's also something that could be made for both Switch 1 and then upscaled and improved somewhat for Switch 2 at the same time. While we are expecting Switch 2 to come out relatively soon, early next year, Nintendo will likely still be supporting Switch 1 for a couple years and putting out some different remakes and remasters to bolster that lineup for Switch 1 owners that aren't ready to move on to Switch 2. So a Zelda 3DS remaster does make some sense. But I will also say that my first thought when thinking about 3DS remasters isn't A Link Between Worlds. It's actually Kid Icarus Uprising. Sakurai has mentioned Kid Icarus Uprising getting a port to Switch at some point or another multiple times. It seems like a project that he's eager to get done, however, we haven't heard much about it actually being done, so obviously it's hard to say. But of all the 3DS games that seem to make sense to get remastered, I honestly think Kid Icarus is the one that needs it the most. And when I consider other games that people want remastered on 3DS, they're usually games that were already remasters or remakes, like Metroid Samus Returns. I would love to see that on a modern console, but in general, I don't think Nintendo likes to repurpose games that have already been repurposed unless they're repurposing it from scratch. So like in the case of Ocarina of Time 3D, I don't think they would upscale that and bring that over to Switch 1 or Switch 2, but rather they would go back to the drawing board for the original Ocarina of Time release and rework that to being something more modern a couple years from now. I think that's the theory. So in the case of something like Metroid Samus Returns, while I would love that, from what I've observed of Nintendo over the years, that's not something I would personally anticipate. But I'm also totally okay with being wrong here, because I would love to see Samus Returns in HD. But considering the GameCube remaster, what might that be? Well, if we get a Zelda spin-off this year, maybe they're still saving Wind Waker or Twilight Princess HD for beyond this fiscal year. And really, there's a number of GameCube games that I would love to see remastered. And when we think about some of the games that we've seen Nintendo put out this year, like Another Code Recollection and Endless Ocean, I don't think we should just assume that they would only remaster really popular GameCube games or really popular 3DS games. I think thinking about some of the more niche ones might make more sense. So I'll throw out a few. What about Cubivore or Custom Robo? I personally would be down for something like that. Now, what I would prefer the most of all the GameCube games to be remastered, F-Zero GX is at the top of my list. This was rumored once upon a time, so maybe we could see it sometime the next fiscal year. But if it's not that, I'll throw out Star Fox, be it Star Fox Assault or Star Fox Adventures. Actually, if I had to pick, I would pick Star Fox Adventures, just because I feel that with a modern Star Fox entry, it would be better than anything Star Fox Assault could provide. But with Star Fox Adventures, I don't expect anything like that to ever happen again, so getting a remaster of that would be pretty nice to have a modern version of it to appreciate it for many more years to come. But what types of 3DS or GameCube remasters do you think we could see beyond the release of Switch 2? They would be made for Switch 1, but through backwards compatibility and maybe some enhancements so you could still enjoy it on Switch 2. And how about what we might see in this Nintendo Direct, like this apparent HD 2D remake of Dragon Quest III? or perhaps something Zelda related? Let me know in the comments below. This is AndresRestart. Thank you so much for listening and watching, and I'll see you all really soon. Take care. Bye.